The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, America. Good morning, world. Good morning, CHD. Welcome once again. My name is Michael Kane. I'm the founder of Teachers for Choice. Today, we had a powerful impact at the Capitol in New York. And I have my friend, colleague, mentor, and partner, John Gilmore from Autism Action Network on today to talk about last week. We were at the Capitol and it was an amazing turnout and was very impactful. We brought busloads of people from Long Island and New York City to come on up to the event. We rallied indoors in the Capitol building in the North Concourse. There's John Gilmore, who was speaking at the event. We had so many amazing people. Naomi Wolf. I actually drove Naomi Wolf up there. That was a lot of fun. We then also went into lobbying, into talking about bills that we support, bills that we don't support, going into offices and talking to people. Mary Holland and Naomi Wolf were the headliners. It's great to get them together. Both native New Yorkers defending their state, coming on out for all of us. Just absolutely amazing. There's two bills I'm going to talk about today that we were lobbying and pushing for. One of them is the Let Us Work Act. The Let Us Work Act would bring back fired unvaccinated workers to their jobs in New York City. We see Ora Moody there, Kevin. Here's Jamie Williams, the assembly sponsor of the bill, came out and spoke strongly in support of the bill. There were people walking all through the halls, talking to staffers, talking to elected officials. I even had a chief of staff of one of the powerful Democrats tell me I was lucky I didn't get the shot. Even though I got fired, he said he got one and he regretted it. Now, another bill that we were lobbying for, that we're going to talk a lot about today with John, we're pretty excited about this one, is the Education for All Act. And I've just posted over at the Teachers for Choice Substack, New York attacks medically fragile children. Let's put that one up here. There you see this adorable young man, Angelo, in school in New York City, has a medical exemption of vaccination, kicked out of his school by doctors who have never met him. Just unbelievable. Now, at the rally itself, we had a young lady, Jane Doe, who actually spoke about having 7 doctors give her medical exemptions. Pierre Corey retweeted this clip. Shout out to my guy, Pierre. I love Pierre Corey. This clip we're going to show you is of this young, brave girl who came up to Albany with her mother and talked about why she needs to be allowed into school, her medical exemption to one vaccine. She's vaccinated, fully vaccinated, except one Hep B shot. Let's show that clip.
7 doctors have said she cannot be vaccinated because she will get hurt or worse. And they still won't let her in school. That's what the bureaucracy of the New York State Department of Health is doing. And this young woman and her mother are here today to speak very bravely. So I'd like to call them up now. We're going to refer to them. Come on up. Jane and Sarah Doe. Thank you so much.
I'm here to restore the bill that... I'm here to support the bill that restores medical exemptions. I'm one of many students that was kicked out of school. I had 7 doctors to support my medical exemptions, No doctor would vaccinate me with my history. I have an autoimmune disease from the vaccines, urticaria, von Willebrand, an active rash, and the school still wouldn't let me back in. I only need 1 out of the 3 hepatitis B vaccines, and I've been out of school since February. Wow. It's had a very big impact on me mentally and physically. I'm a 10th grader, and I lost my whole sophomore year. I deserve an education.
Yes, girl, yes! Yes!
So there it was. I mean, there was Sarah Doe advocating for herself, and just tragically kicked out of school, just like Angelo kicked out of school. With that, I'm going to bring on just the legendary John Gilmore from Autism Action Network. How you doing today, John?
Pretty good. How are you, Michael? Thanks for having me.
Doing pretty good. So it was really impactful, you know, to hear Sarah speak in the rally, and then to go to meetings and to hear her speak to elected officials at times actually had not a dry eye, you know, in the room, hearing what was happening to her. Why don't you talk a little bit about the bill, the Education for All bill, what we were doing in Albany around it? Just talk to the audience.
A little background on this, because I think it's a little difficult for people to understand how bad things actually are in New York and California, because it's very similar there as well. You know, 46 states have religious exemptions, right? And they all have medical exemptions. And essentially what that means in those states is the parent generally has the last say on what's going to go into their kid's body, and they do not lose their right to an education. Okay, there's 4 states, California, New York, Connecticut, and Maine, who just in the last few years, all these states had religious exemptions not that long ago, repealed their religious exemptions, and California and New York have gone after with a vengeance the medical exemptions. You know, medically fragile children who have physicians saying they can't get a shot. The New York State Department of Health is going after those kids and trying to get them kicked out of school as quickly as they can. And it's really hard to get information from the Department of Health. They basically ignore FOIL requests and just say, okay, go ahead and sue us, right? And so it's hard to get information, but we do have some information that they have to report to the CDC. And it's clear that in the last 5 years, the number of medical exemptions in New York has declined by at least half, right?
Wow.
We're talking maybe at most 1 out of 1,000 kids across the state have those exemptions. And they're really sort of what's going on for a long time is that it was very difficult to get a medical exemption. It still is very difficult to get a medical exemption. What's happened in the last couple of years, it's becoming increasingly impossible to retain a medical exemption. We're talking about children who have serious health issues that their physicians say they really can't get a shot. And what the state is saying, you know, that may be the case. We really don't care. We just don't want those kids in the system, right? And we're just going to take their medical exemptions. And if they got to get a shot, they got to get a shot. If they got to leave the state, if they got to homeschool, whatever, we just don't want them in school, right? And, you know, we're seeing all kinds of different results come out of it. You saw Sarah there, right? She had a medical exemption for years. She had documented vaccine injuries. That isn't sufficient for Oceanside School District, not far from where I am on Long Island. And she's out of school for 5 months. We know families, believe it or not, this is going on now. Families whose children have exemptions. We know I'm dealing with one family in particular right now. 5 kids, 4 completely vaccinated. One child 10 years ago had a very serious reaction to her shots. She got rheumatoid arthritis. She got joint injuries as a result of it. And she's had a medical exemption up until January. I don't know what happened in January, but that's when they really started. A memo must have gone out saying, get rid of the kids, right? Anyway, out of the blue, they pull this young girl's medical exemption. Her parents don't know what to do. They want to keep her in school. So against their better judgment, they decide to give her some more shots. And what happens? She instantly re-injures herself in exactly the same way that she was originally injured, and exactly for the same reasons that her physicians had said, do not give her a shot, right?
Oh my God.
just this last week, this poor girl had to have knee surgery as a result of the vaccine injury that she sustained trying to comply with this absolutely insane policy that we have
So
here.
John, I just want to emphasize something here. So what happened was doctors who've never met this girl basically ordered her to get these vaccines against her doctor's advice. Otherwise,
That's right.
otherwise she'd be kicked out of school. And the parents went forward with it begrudgingly. They didn't want to. They felt they had no choice. And the exact injuries they were
Yes.
warned of by the doctor who knew her
Yes.
actually happened.
Yes. And it's just crazy. I mean, we actually have cases of families who have children who died as a result of a vaccine injury. Okay. Families where they actually went to court and the court endorsed that this was a vaccine injury that resulted in death. That is almost impossible to get, right? And those families, the siblings of the child who died, cannot get medical exemptions. The system would rather have them risk death than to defy the orders of the vaccine industry.
And John, that's something that's long known. If you've had siblings who are injured or who have died, that automatically flags you as somebody who's at risk for those vaccines as well too. This isn't like a new concept. It's not like something we've never heard of in America. It's well established.
I mean, they've known that since they created the first vaccine. We've always known that a certain number of people are going to be injured and killed by it. That's but in the modern today, there is a large and powerful group of people that simply refuse to acknowledge that. And there's this attitude out there. Okay, one of the worst enemies of ours, let's say the biggest proponent for the vaccine industry in New York State is a state senator by the name of Brad Hoylman. Now, they don't really talk to us anymore, but about 10 years, I was in a meeting with Senator Hoylman and some other people. I explained my own situation, right? My son was injured as an infant when he was about a year old, and it did permanent, severe neurological damage to my son, which we're dealing with right now, right? And I told the story to the senator, and what he said to me is, one, even if your child was injured by that vaccine, that's just the price that we have to pay. Okay.
Whoa.
Yeah. According to Senator Hoylman, my son's lifelong injury, inability to speak and do other things is a price that apparently not only my son Luke and our family, but he apparently includes himself in the we. That's a price that we are paying. That's the attitude we have, and it's barbaric. It's really barbaric.
And the problem is that's not a price that Brad Hoylman is paying, or that I'm paying. I didn't pay that. You paid that. Your wife
and my son paid that.
And your son paid that, and your family pays that. Till this day, as an adult, your son requires you or your wife or others to be there for him.
Yes, he needs 24/7 care.
Yeah. So here's the good news. I want to switch up a little bit to the good news a little bit. For years, John, we have been on the defense fighting off bad bills, which we're doing in New York today right now. But the tone really seems we have less to worry there, and we're going on the offense with this Education for All Act. And we are pushing in this last month of this session to get this bill passed. So one thing that people can do, go to teachersforchoice.substack.com. Right at the top, you're going to see Angelo. Hey, Lou, show that picture of Angelo again, this wonderful young man with Down syndrome. You'll see Angelo. Click on that, and the action alert is right there for you. If you're in New York, you have family members in New York, get them to do this and say, we need the Education for All Act passed. What does it do? It takes doctors who don't know these kids out of the equation. And the doctor who knows the child and sees them is the one who is going to have the final say in this. So please support that, because we are at a moment where if we really push, we might be able to get this passed into law.
Now, one interesting thing about this bill, okay, is that in the last few years, as I'm sure all your viewers are aware, the whole issue of vaccine has become extremely partisan, right? Once upon a time, not that long ago, it wasn't a partisan issue. There were friends and enemies on both sides of the aisle. Well, that has changed, and predominantly our friends are Republicans, and the people who are really giving us a hard time and putting the bad bills are Democrats. However, this bill in New York has been introduced by two Democrats, which I
Yes.
find really I'm very glad to see that, right? It's a common sense bill. It's almost sort of crazy that we have to do it, but it's and what's really interesting about this as well, which is sort of bizarre, is we actually have a very good law about medical exemptions in New York. It simply says that if a doctor thinks that a child could be injured by a shot, the doctor can write a letter, and that's it, right? What's happened over the years is the Department of Health has distorted all the regulations to completely take away the power from the actual physician, right? And what they say is that the person running the school has the authority to make this decision. But what they do first, if any doctor in New York writes a medical exemption, they're going to get a visit from the Department of Health, and the Department of Health is going to threaten them with an investigation and trying to take their license if they write any more medical exemptions. It's very difficult to find a physician brave enough to do that, right? And then on top of that, they go to the whoever runs the school, and they say, "Well, it's up to you to have to make whatever decision you want about this. But if you make the wrong decision, we're going to slap you with a $2,000 fine per day for every kid in the school who we think doesn't have an appropriate medical exemption, right?" And that's the way they do this, right? And so the doctor tells the school, the consulting doctor who has never seen the kid, okay, who has no legal responsibility to that child. An attending physician has a very clear ethical, moral, and legal responsibility to the patient. These school district doctors have no responsibility whatsoever to that child. Their
Exactly.
responsibility is to keep their very cushy, very high paying, very low work gig with a school district to look at these things. And
And
it's completely unethical.
John, that's part of how they keep this insanity going. Some people think that, like, oh, they hate children, they're trying to kill children. It's not really quite like that. What it is, it's if they're removed, if they're taken out of the picture, they don't have to see the kid, they don't have to meet the kid, they don't have to meet the parent, they don't see them when they get injured. It becomes very easy. And we don't know what other incentives might be there to be making them do this as well too. But they remove them from it and put them in this ridiculous, faceless bureaucracy where kids get sacrificed and these people get to experience none of the pain from what
That's right.
their orders did. That's what happens.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
insane.
So John, we're just about out of time for this segment
Yeah.
here. But everybody, go to teachersforchoice.substack.com. Go to autismactionnetwork.org. That's John's website. You see it right under him right now. All week and next week, we are going to have information about this bill. We are going to be pushing this out there. And everybody in New York, contact your lawmakers. Call. We need the Education for All Act to pass. The time for New York to be a normal, civil state that respects the lives of medically fragile people is long, long, long overdue. John Gilmore, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks a lot, Michael. Take care.
Thank you. Everybody, stick around. We got a bunch more stuff coming up. We have an update on the situation on the ostriches that are being culled and killed. Remember that? Polly covered that. We're going to be bringing them on in just a little bit. We also have another people study story. But before that, I want to show just two quick clips of two women I absolutely love. And it came from the launch of the Maha Institute. Last week, the day after our rally in Albany, the Maha Institute launched in Washington, D.C. I was unfortunately not able to get there because of how tight they were. But this is an institute that's going to be a permanent fixture in Washington, D.C., representing all things Maha. I think it's a critically important moment for medical freedom, very similar to when HHS Secretary Kennedy was put in place and confirmed. Now having a solid institute, and we have two clips. First, let's show the CEO of Children's Health Defense, Mary Holland, at the MAHA Institute. Let's show that.
Children are the most vulnerable in any society. Babies can't talk, children can't vote. To go to school, they have to be subjected to all kinds of rules. They can't contribute to candidates. They are truly our most vulnerable citizens, and yet they are the people who are really most controlled, both by the families, by parents, but also by the state. And one of the things that Bobby Kennedy said famously was, a healthy person has 1,000 dreams and a sick person has but one. And we have over half of our children today who are sick. Childhood is a time of dreaming. I'm going to be a policeman, or I'm going to be a firewoman, or I'm going to be the president of the United States. And to think that half of our children have but one dream is really a tragedy. So we've been focused for almost 10 years on toxic exposures, exposing them, getting rid of them, holding people accountable, and putting in place safeguards so they don't happen again. So we focus on problems, pollutants, contamination in the air, in the water, in the food, but also in the medical system. We do look at injections, we do look at shots. The children have to comply in all 50 states with many shots. And in some states, where I am in New York, they really have no opt-outs. I believe this MAHA movement, Make America Healthy Again, can turn this around. I believe that we as adults have a responsibility to our children. That's our job, to nurture the next generation and to smooth the path for them. And I believe that together we can make it happen. Thank you so much.
So that was a great clip of Mary Holland in the first few minutes at the MAHA Institute full-day conference. There's one other clip I want to show because this one's near and dear to my heart, and then we're going to go to the update on the ostrich culling. But this clip comes from my attorney, Sujata Gibson, who also has her own firm, the Gibson Law Firm, and working with Children's Health Defense, talking about fired unvaccinated workers in New York City and the hell that we have all been put through here. She was able to give a good 4 or 5 minute statement overview of everything that happened at the MAHA Institute. We were really happy that that happened. Let's show that clip of Sujata Gibson.
And once you hear their stories, you'll know why we're all here together. Go ahead, Sujata.
Good morning. So it's such an honor to be here. My name is Sujata Gibson. I'm a civil rights lawyer and a part-time law professor at Cornell Law School, where I teach in the area of movement law. I've been a part of the, I guess you would say, the MAHA movement, and it was the medical freedom and other movements for a long, long time. And it is amazing to see how far we've come. It is amazing to see the synergies between medical freedom and soil regeneration and healthy food. All of the things that are going to make our nation thrive and make us all free, coming together. That is a powerful testament. But it's also, you know, we have a long way to go. So New York is kind of what I would say is ground zero for where the work is really still very intense. In New York, we had some of the most draconian lockdowns and vaccine mandates in the country. New York City imposed vaccine mandates on all workers in every sector, private and public, and made bizarre carve-outs here and there for like famous, you know, entertainers or ball players and their entourages. But the rest of the city was subject to these mandates, and outrageous religious discrimination and medical discrimination took place under those mandates. I represented thousands and still represent thousands of these workers, and I'm still fighting. We have gotten some victories. We were able to strike down the healthcare mandate, the COVID mandate for healthcare workers that was keeping 34,000 healthcare workers, doctors, nurses, and so forth, out of their jobs. We were able to get good. We were able to get, important rulings protecting religious rights in New York City, and many, many cases we've won where workers are reinstated through orders, but New York City still hasn't let them come back to work. Today, we have thousands of the people who kept our city going through the darkest days of COVID, who picked up our trash, who fought our fires, who kept our streets safe. They are still being kept out of work. Teachers, problem codes have been attached to their employment files. They can't get a job elsewhere. Their lives have been ruined, and I've seen the human toll up close. I've seen the firefighter who was working so hard for his family and had such a bright future ahead of him, and who got hurt fighting fires for people and saving people, now rendered homeless, struggling to get anybody to listen to him, even though there's a court order saying he's supposed to be back at work years ago. This is the state we're in New York, and they get an automatic stay on appeal, and these appeals go on for years. So we're winning some legal victories, but we need more. So I want to tie that in a little bit to movement law. One of the things that I talk to my students about is that victories aren't really won in courtrooms. Courts play an important role, but victories come first from the streets and from the culture shifting. Courts don't really like to make new precedent. They like to follow the culture. And MAHA has made it. MAHA has done amazing things. Our culture is shifting. People are starting to understand that basic civil rights, basic rights to decide what happens to your own body, rights to be free of poisons, rights to have your religious beliefs respected, are important. But we have to keep up with those efforts. And part of what we need to do is keep storytelling, keep speaking to power, and keep seeking pressure that will help the courts understand how important it is to make this right. Because these workers have given us everything, and we owe it to them to fight for them. So I am so glad to be here today, and I'm going to hand it off to the actual workers to talk about what it's been like and what they think should happen. So
thank you so much, Sujata. Thank you.
And that was Sujata Gibson, civil rights attorney at the MAHA Institute just last week in Washington, D.C. People can check out more at mahainstitute.us. And I'm going to be talking about it more because I'm actually really, really excited that they have that. Okay, now I would like to bring on our next guest from SaveOurOstriches.com, Connie Shields and Katie Pastany. Thank you both so much for joining us today. Katie, please, before we go into the update on what's happening, give my audience a background. What exactly was happening with the ostriches? Where is this happening? Just get everybody caught up who this is their first time hearing about this.
Sure. Thank you for having us on this morning. We had symptoms this December that came up in our ostriches that were on our farm from 2020 after. Our ostriches on our farm from 2020 prior have all been healthy, no symptoms. This is a very important part of the story because we found out through this whole legal process that all of our ostriches from 2020 prior that have been on our farm, their egg yolk shows antibodies to the H5N1 avian influenza virus. So they had pre-exposure, which shows that they got their herd immunity, and they have thrived, they've done well. And then when we had some symptoms come back through our farm this December, it was all the ostriches that had no exposure to it that we found our herd immunity that we have again. That led us to where we are, though, because there was an anonymous call that went into Canadian Food Inspection Agency that led us to two very controversial PCR tests being done by the Canadian Food Inspection Agency on two deceased ostriches. We did have more deaths than that, but they asked for two samples. There was two dead birds as per their request. They took PCR tests, ran them at high cycles, And that has led us into the fight of our lives. Now we're about 126 days, I think, just from January 14th, all healthy, absolutely beautiful, flightless, prehistoric animals that have their herd immunity. And we are in a fight of our lives to keep them alive because the Canadian Food Inspection Agency wants them dead. We are being met with consistent resistance that we cannot retest our animals without a threat of 6 months in jail and a $200,000 fine to show the public that we are absolutely pose no public health and safety risk. We have had a very long legal battle already in this. We have the support of our local Premier, David Eby, is even saying he's frustrated that they will not give us, take any exceptions for our farm. We have Conservative MPs. We have MLAs across British Columbia that have reached out. We have John Catsimatidis out of New York that has his radio show, WABC, that has had Senator Kennedy on saying, hey, this farm needs to be saved for research. We've had Doug Ford say, like, I'm going to try and see what I can do and talk to some people. We have so much global outcry and support around our farm right now. And we didn't lose our 2 points that we disputed in our judicial review on April 15th and 16th. The federal court judge that they flew in from Ottawa dismissed our 2 disputes, which was very disappointing. And that has led us back into an active cull state, active slaughter state. And now that is what we are just fighting. We are trying to get as much help as possible because we're sitting at the farm with the most anxiety. We have supporters coming from across Canada to visit the ostriches and just show their support and solidarity and being unified. But as you know, even from what I just heard, this sounds like the same repeat of what you've just had on your program. You know, our heroes that were heroes, which are heroes in this case, are our farmers, dedicating their generational contribution to providing us with healthy and nutritional food supply, are at risk from becoming the next villains to the government. And we need to keep our heroes the heroes, and we need to fight for them with everything we got. And that is where we're at.
Wow, that is shocking. I'm so sorry about this. What is happening on the ground right now? What is happening at the farms? You say supporters are coming. What does that look like? What's actually happening?
We have a camp we're about 45 people right now. Over the last weekend, we had about 200.
Wow.
We have just people showing up to show their support. They're in tears. We try to have some laughter, give each other a lot of hugs and a lot of love. But the truth of the matter, the fact is just everybody knows that this is a way bigger issue. This is this is an outreach, government overreach. They are coming to just show their support and see these big, beautiful animals that are on the chopping block of potentially being culled. And it's an active cull order. So we're just asking for everybody to please reach out to your local media, raise some noise, call our federal government, ask for help. We have food at the farm right now being cooked up all the time. There's a fire always burning. And we're just asking for everybody to continuously go to saveourostriches.com. There's action items at Prevent Genocide 2030, Save Our Ostriches. There's letters that can be sent into our government. And it's just, we are in the fight of our lives with anxiety, but so much hope that we have enough people like, the Maha, we were just saying, it's the people's voice matters. And we can make the change if we stand up on a unified, example and just scream from the mountaintops that this is wrong. Stamping out is not a one-size-fits-all approach. We need to look at farmers on an individual basis. Our farmers are being under attack. We cull, we repopulate. The truth of the matter, the fact is, as long as there's migratory birds, there's always going to be avian influenza in the world. So what do? We are not going to kill all the migratory birds in the world. We definitely shouldn't be killing all of our animals in the world. We're losing genetic diversity. We are not addressing natural immunity and herd immunity anymore. Our farmers are getting tired. They are giving up. And it's no fault of their own. Who wants to see their animals repeatedly get killed because they're exposed to migratory animals or birds? And we're losing our food security. Our farmers are just tired, and we're going to be reliant on processed meat, vaccinations, because we'll have no natural immunity. And our farm offers a sustainable solution to help stabilize this crisis with animal and human health. Natural solution using antibodies that these ostriches develop. Everything is natural. There's no MNRA. There's no vaccinations that these animals have. We are approaching this in the natural way, and we're coming under fire for it.
Well, Katie, the real truth is all of those things are under fire. Natural immunity, organic farming, secure food systems. Coming to a place of required vaccination and processed food seems to be one of the game plans happening out there. Connie, you're with us as well, too. We don't have video from you, but I just want to make sure, please jump in as well, too, Connie, and tell us, give us your input on this situation.
Well, I wanted to begin with a bombshell revelation that took place on, I believe it was Thursday, at a recent meeting of the Regional District Central Kootenay. And that's where the government had contacted them about taking the carcasses of these animals after the slaughter. At the meeting on Wednesday, I was able to ask a question. And the question that I proposed to them was, when was the RDCK first contacted to prepare for receiving the 400 carcasses? And the answer knocked us off our feet. November 2024. The first bird to get sick was December 10th.
Wow.
2024. So let that sink in.
Yeah, no, that doesn't need to sink in for me. I know exactly what that is. They had a plan ready to go that they were rolling out before there was a problem.
So that's not biosecurity, that's premeditated murder. And so then the next day after I was able to ask that question, Katie went into the board meeting in person, and she was able to dispel a lot of the misinformation that had been circulating around the board table. And she laid it out and told them exactly what was going on. They were trying to say that the ostrich farm had already lost 2 court cases, and that's not the case. They haven't lost anything. In fact, they won a judicial review. Unfortunately, the judge, in my opinion, erred in many ways in law, and there is an appeal going through. So they haven't lost anything. And the sad thing is after all of this was addressed, public support really, really took off at that point.
Right.
And that resulted in an onslaught of attacks on the farm. And sadly enough, from a lot of freedom fighters, or those who we thought were freedom fighters.
Wow.
But it's the same old thing, divide and conquer.
Yeah.
And, these globalists that are behind all of this are the experts at creating divide and conquer. So it's really sad to see this happening, but Mary said it perfectly. We must stand up, we must speak out, and we must unite.
Yes, that is exactly it. That is exactly it. Unfortunately, we are out of time here. Everyone go to saveourostriches.com. Give your support to this effort. What needs to happen here is way beyond this one farm. This is a place that people are taking a stand and fighting for its right, fighting for the food security of all, fighting for a way of life that all of us here at CHD TV are in support of. Thank you so much for joining us today. Good luck, and we'll be checking in with the next update for sure.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you both so much. Stick around. Don't go anywhere. We have another People Study update. This is an unfortunate story where a vaccine resulted in a death. Let's roll that.
think before we start, everybody, I'd like you to see a picture. May I show a picture of your beautiful...
Yes.
Do you call her Maddie?
Maddie.
Okay, this is the girl that we're talking about. This is Maddie. And again, another Gardasil story, and sadly, Maddie died as a result of this. So you will hear Maddie's story. Her mum is brave. This really did not happen that long ago.
June 24th.
June 24th this year. So it's very, very raw, and thank you so much for coming to talk. We'll show we'll put Maddie's picture on the bus in a minute. All right, so I think let's go back. Let's go back first of all and talk about you. How many children have you got?
I have two.
You have two, of which Maddie was one.
She was our oldest.
She was our oldest. And let's talk about you as a mum. What was your feeling on vaccines before she had this Gardasil?
I was a rule follower. I just did what my doctor said. Pediatrician that we saw, we actually had more of a connection. We went to the same church, and my son was a classmate of hers. And I don't know that I would call her a friend, but it was more than just a patient-doctor relationship. And she recommended the vaccine for Maddie.
The Gardasil vaccine. Did she say what it would be good for?
Preventing cervical cancer. But I knew that it was a very new vaccine, and I don't know why, but for some reason I was a bit reluctant, and so I had turned it down a couple of times, but then it would have been in December of 2015. She was 15 years old, and she developed...
Is this after one vaccine?
No, she hadn't had any yet.
She hadn't had any, okay.
Had no Gardasil at that point. But she was having periods all the time.
Yeah.
And she was diagnosed with either anovulatory bleeding or polycystic ovarian syndrome, And she wanted to put her on birth control. And I felt like I wanted a second opinion. And so I took her to my gynecologist, who I had seen for years, and she told us that it was anovulatory bleeding, and that yes,
so it was what?
Anovulatory bleeding, right. And that the way that they treat that is with birth control. And oh, by the way, while you're here, we need to do Gardasil because it's the latest and greatest thing. And I had, had the discussions with the pediatrician, and I consented, and
but
so
wait, she was in there because she had problems with her bleeding, and they're suggesting that she has the HPV Gardasil while you're there, even though that she's not regular and things aren't quite right.
And they put her on birth control, and they gave her the first dose of the vaccine on the same day. And looking back, I do know that she had a reaction after the first one, but we attributed it to side effects of the birth control pills. And she struggled for quite a while, and I was calling the pediatrician, I was calling the gynecologist, and she finally switched her, I think 2 different times, to different birth control pills, and she finally got her to one that we felt like she could tolerate. But like I said, in hindsight, I think that those side effects were probably related to the vaccine, and maybe a combination of both. So then she gets the second dose, which was, the first dose was February 3rd of 2012. I think I said 2015 earlier. I apologize for that.
Okay. It's
It's 2012.
It's okay.
And then she gets the second dose on April 2nd of 2012, and that's really when everything changed dramatically. She was unable to get out of bed. She had this horrible headache. The doctors referred to it as a migraine-like headache because it had all the symptoms, but it didn't respond to any of the medications. And she had, her memory was gone. She used to have what she called a photographic memory. It was very easy for her to learn. She was an excellent student. And all of that went away. She was, chronically tired. And
what would happen when you would, say to the doctor, look, she was fine, she had the second vaccine, she's now got headaches, she can't concentrate. Would the doctor respond? How would they respond?
No, it was just a coincidence. It would have happened anyway, and it just so happened to line up with the vaccines. But what was really interesting is through the course of this whole thing, she saw probably 10 to 12 different specialists over a year and a half, and the only two doctors that would refuse to entertain the idea that this could be a reaction to Gardasil were the pediatrician and the gynecologist. Those were the two that were actually treating her at the time. But every other specialist that I took her to said absolutely could be tied. Now they said it would be.
So wait, the pediatrician and the
gynecologist
are the two people that say it's not the vaccine, and everybody else says it could be the vaccine. So they're the two people that are getting money from making money out of this vaccine. Are saying it's not. Interesting. Can't be a coincidence.
So, we spent a year and a half basically just spinning our wheels with, I would take her from one doctor to the next.
Could you go into more detail on her pain and what we're actually talking about? Because it's very similar to the other Gardasil. I'm just going to remind everybody as you talk of your beautiful daughter.
The debilitating headache. We had to black out all the light from her room. She couldn't stand brightness. She didn't leave her bed for days. She was just in excruciating pain. She felt like her head was going to explode. She would curl up in a ball and tears would come out of her eyes and she would whimper. And I was concerned that she wasn't eating and she wasn't drinking, and so I would spoon ice chips into her mouth to try to keep her hydrated. She had difficulty sleeping, but there were times when she could sleep for 15 hours and she would wake up and she would tell me, she said, I don't feel restored. I don't understand it. She said, it's like I haven't even slept, but yet I slept for 15 hours. And it was just this horrible cycle that she had gotten into.
What was happening to her mentally?
Well, her life as she knew it was gone. She was a 15-year-old girl who had missed one day of school prior to that as a high school student. And her life was turned upside down. By the time she was a junior in high school, she was homebound, unable to attend school, and we had a teacher that came to our house to teach her when she was up to it. And she lost friends. She wasn't able to have the life that a normal 15 or 16-year-old girl would have. And she lost a lot, and ultimately she paid the ultimate price with her life. After we spent a year and a half seeing all these specialists with no relief, and it was not for the lack of trying. I know that they all wanted to help her, but there just was no help. We kind of had reached the end of our rope and really had nowhere else to turn. We had a new primary care physician who is fantastic. She's a Lyme literate doctor, and so many of Maddie's symptoms were very similar to Lyme disease. And so I felt like she would be a good fit, and it turned out she was. She looked at all of our records and where we had been, what we had done, and she had us, do a few more tests and see a couple other specialists. But then she told me, she said, I want you to have an open mind, when I tell you what I'm going to tell you next. And she said, I think you need to seek alternative or integrated care. And she said, I've seen fantastic results with my Lyme patients and with my autistic patients. I remember specifically she told me that some of her nonverbal autistic patients had started talking in 2 weeks after they started alternative treatment. And so that gave me hope. And so we went down that path. And I mean, she was still being seen by that doctor. And for the most part, her body healed. She had a very strict diet, which she never cheated on. She was gluten-free, dairy-free, soy-free. She ate all organic. And, you know, and by now she's a college student, and that's very difficult, you know, to do when your peers are, you know, eating McDonald's or wherever else they want to go. But she always maintained her diet, and but the depression was just something that she was never able to overcome. I think, you know, everything that she had been through at such a very young age, I mean, it impacted her life so dramatically. The depression and the anxiety was a huge part of her life, and it's unfortunate that she didn't share a lot of that with us.
What did she talk about when she would tell you how depressed that she felt because she couldn't do the things that she used to do before this vaccine?
Yeah, that, I mean, you know, early on that was what she talked about, and but I really felt like she had improved and she had overcome. And so when she would talk about the depression, it was more about the state of the world. And you know, she had a huge heart, and she had a number of people in her life that were struggling with different things, and I know that she was very concerned about them, but obviously she had her own issues. She wrote a lot and journaled, and you know, we have that now. And one of the things that she wrote about frequently, which she never shared with me, was that since the vaccine, the Gardasil vaccine, she had this buzzing in her brain. It was this constant buzzing noise. And she said that at times, when she wrote about it, at times it was deafening. At other times it would settle down, but it was always there, and how it exhausted her, and she could never make it stop. And I mean, I thought about, when I read that, I was shocked. I know some of her friends were aware of it as well. And I just thought about that. And I mean, I can't imagine having a constant noise in my brain, and how bothersome that would be, how difficult that would be. And, you know, I think that really what happened is we kind of set up a perfect storm. You know, we had the previously healthy child who was doing well academically in school, who had missed a day of school as a freshman, and then Gardasil happens and her life is turned upside down, and you know, eventually it got to the point where she couldn't take it any longer. You know, even though we felt that her body had healed, her mind had not, and it was too much.
And so June this year, June 2017,
June
what
10th.
happened? You get a call?
We didn't get a call. It was a Saturday, and I typically hear from her frequently, you know, via text, or she calls or I call, and I realized that I had texted her first thing in the morning when I got up, and I didn't expect that she would respond then. But then I texted her around noon because I was at Whole Foods and I had seen some sort of a supplement that was good for depression and anxiety, and I told her all about it, and, you know, do you want to try it? Because she would not take prescription drugs. She would not. I mean, she had been on every antidepressant you can think of, and it just got to the point where nothing was working, and the combinations that they were prescribing, our pharmacist was uncomfortable with them. And so we got to the point where, I mean, she just, you know, she was just doing the holistic and integrative treatment plan. But she didn't respond to the text then. And then at 3:30 I texted her, at 3:30 in the afternoon I texted her again, and that's when I thought, wait a minute, I haven't heard from her all day. So I went and I asked my husband if he had heard from her, and he hadn't. And so I asked my son, he hadn't. And she had a job, a part-time job in the college town where she lived. It was about 35 or 40 minutes from where we live. And I called her place of employment because I thought, well, maybe she's working. And they said, nope, she comes in at 5. And they said, but we'll have her call you when she gets here. And obviously she didn't show up. But by then I had contacted a few other people and no one had heard from her. And then I found out that the restaurant where she worked, they had sent an employee to her house and the police were there. So I called the police in the college town and they wouldn't tell me anything. And so my husband had he'd left the house because he didn't really realize that we were in crisis mode at 3 o'clock when I asked him. But we definitely were by about 4:30 or 5. And so my neighbor drove me to her house, and the police were there, and they told me she had been found at about 5 o'clock.
She's taken her life.
She had taken her life.
It's just tragic, beyond tragic.
Yes, because she was a happy, healthy child with an unremarkable health history prior to the Gardasil vaccine. And it's a decision that, I will forever regret.
She had 2 of the 3 vaccines.
Correct. By the time we were approaching the 3rd, we had basically figured out that this is what it had to be. I would stay up all night trying to research and figure out what had happened to her. And I remember one night my husband, he came in and, he wanted me to get some sleep. But he suggested, he said, why don't you make a timeline of all of her absences from school? And I had all that information available through the school's website, so I did. And he said, and then why don't we drop in those 2 doses of Gardasil? And she went downhill after the first one, and then, as I said earlier, the bottom fell out after the second one. And so we were approaching the 3rd and final dose, and we refused it. And we were, I don't know that I would call it bullied, but I was lectured by the receptionist at the gynecologist's practice that said, well, she has to complete the series. Your insurance might not pay for it if you don't complete the series. And, as we both know, it's a very expensive vaccine. And I just remember being taken aback at how she had dealt with me. And I remember I told her, I said, how much is it? And I believe it was about $1,500 for the series back then. And I told her, I said, and you think that losing $1,500 is better than, or not losing $1,500 is better than potentially damaging her further? And I said, I don't care. And, we didn't get it. And I believe I got a second call from a nurse, trying to encourage me, but we still refused. And, and when I think back to those days, I can't imagine what the 3rd dose would have done.
No.
I don't.
Did you file it as a vaccine injury? Have you done that?
We have, yes, and it was dismissed.
So you tell me about that. How far did you get with it?
We had a special master assigned to us, and there was discussion between our attorney and her, And of course, you know, all the records were subpoenaed. And I mean, they basically said there was, you know, there was not enough, I don't know if they called it evidence, but there was not enough in her records that would convince them that this was a serious adverse reaction. And in the final dismissal, you know, it says that she was 18 by then, and so it was filed under her name, not ours. And it said, you know, that she claimed to have debilitating headaches, chronic fatigue, and severe depression following the vaccine, but they dismissed it.
They murdered her. Everybody here wants you to know that they're desperately sorry.
Yes.
Desperately sorry. And let's just show you Maddie again. I hope that the CDC, I hope that Offit, Pan, Eve, and all you other foul trolls out there see this face of this beautiful girl. And Trump, you know what? Guess what? You're head of this country. Your young are dropping like flies because of this vaccine. Her story is just utterly tragic. That poor girl with the noise in her head and the pain. What was she doing at college? What was she studying?
She was a Spanish major. She had spent a semester abroad in Spain the spring semester. She was in Salamanca, Spain, and she absolutely loved it. And I went to visit, and we had a fantastic time, and I'm so grateful that I made that decision. It was kind of spur of the moment, and it was, I don't know, it felt extravagant, but I'm so glad that I did that because we had a wonderful time there together, and I got to see her, and it was like she was in her element. And her Spanish, I thought it was fantastic. She always felt that it needed improvement, but we had a lovely time.
And how old was she when she died?
21.
21 years old.
21.
What a tragic waste of life. What a beautiful, beautiful girl. It's just disgusting. It really is. Now, the lady that was in here before,
yes.
I want you to be best friends with her. Because I've told her she needs to write a book, and we need Maddie's story in that book. I think it should be a collection. We have to stop this happening. Now, can I use this beautiful picture of Maddie to put on the...
you can have it.
Thank you. I'm going to put it up right now.
Okay.
Maddie, what? It's just so disgusting. And then meanwhile we have some idiot with a sign that says vaccines save lives. I mean, please.
Brought this for you too.
World is falling apart. Oh look, little Maddie, come sit next to me. Is it M-A-D-D-I-E?
M-A-D-D-I-E. Madeline, but she went by Maddie.
Well, she's coming up here next to Chandler, Jimmy, Chris, surrounded by boys.
Okay. She liked boys.
She's surrounded by lovely, handsome Christopher and Chandler. Let me just get a pen.
Here.
Both those boys died from the flu vaccine, single flu vaccine. The girl is so, this is Brittany. Brittany died from the girl so we have Chris and we have Caitlin down there. So how did you say it's spelled? M-A-D-D?
M-A-D-D-I-E.
Beautiful Maddie, joining the fight. Down here as well, with the other girls. These are all my little girls here, so she can see that. see the baby. That's just what you need to do. Go and see the beautiful baby.
The pizza restaurant where Maddie worked in, well, she went to KU, which is in Lawrence, Kansas. Saturday night, her coworkers did a Dying to Donate. Maddie was very passionate about women's safety, and she volunteered at a domestic violence center.
Maddie did?
Yeah, we never knew that. And so
when did you find out about that?
When we were making her arrangements, we were wanting to find a place for donations, and so I asked one of her close friends, and she said, you know, she volunteered at the Willow Domestic Violence Center, and I did not know that. And so that's where we asked, you know, if people wanted to make a donation in her memory, we asked that it go there. And so then her coworkers did this Dying to Donate event Saturday night, and the turnout was fantastic. And we met so many wonderful people, you know, that obviously she had touched their lives, but you know, we had not met them prior to that. And it was such an uplifting event. You know, people came up and they said, you know, are you Maddie's mom and dad? And
she was
yes,
a very special girl.
And they, you know, I only worked here for a month because it wasn't my thing, but let me tell you about your daughter. And, you know, then they would share their memories. And I remember when we drove home that night, our hearts felt full for the first time in a long time. And so, you know, I will never forget her. And I do hope that, you know, one day, I know the reason that we went through the, you know, filing her petition was that, you know, if we do have the opportunity to pursue this further at some point, we've preserved those rights for her. And when she was here, I was her biggest advocate, and I definitely will be there to take up the slack.
Thank you so much. And how's your husband and her brother doing?
You know, we're all doing as
best as
well
you can.
as can be.
It's only been
expected.
2 months.
Yeah, it'll be 8 weeks on the 24th.
So you're going through shock still.
Right. And when it's, you know, we're seeing a grief counselor, and
Yes.
She said that it could take 2 years before, the way she described it is, before our lives feel organized again, because they do feel very disorganized. You know, the permanence is really starting to set in, and the hole in our family is very real, and you just have to sit with that and acknowledge it. But you know, I tell people, I get out of bed every day and I try.
Well, your story, Maddie's story, is going to help so many.
That's my intent. You know, my intent has never been, I've been vocal about this for a long time, but my intent has never been to tell somebody, because this happened to me, you shouldn't do it, or because this happened to my child, you shouldn't do it. My intent has been, just educate yourself. I mean, I didn't look at anything. I just trusted, and I followed the rules. And when I looked at the package insert and I saw how those clinical trials were ran, I mean, it doesn't take a statistician or, you know, a brilliant mind to see what was done. And I wish I had known that prior to giving consent, because I'm sure that we wouldn't be here today.
Yeah. People are telling you that they love you, and they will never forget Maddie. And I'm so glad you're friends with the Robinsons.
Yes.
They are friends with Teresa Robinson, and the Robinson family are they are so loving.
Yeah, they are.
You need to go and hold that baby and kiss its cheeks and hang out with them for a bit.
Well, you know, we met when they came. They brought Hannah to see Maddie's doctor, and they lived in our area for the better part of a year. And that's the sacrifice that they made. and that's how we met. And
Hannah has a wonderful photograph of her and Maddie
Yes.
together. It's on her wall. If you go to Hannah Robinson's wall, you will see a beautiful picture of Maddie and
Right.
Hannah together.
But so that's how we became friends, and yeah, I need to go visit and hold that baby.
You certainly do need to give it lots of cuddles. We're going to make sure that we're there. But really, you need to know how many people love you, and give our love to your husband and her brother as well. It's tough. It's going to be a tough road ahead.
No, it is. I know. But the other day, my husband said something to me that I thought was really fitting, and he said, you know, I never thought about it this way. He said, but we've had years of training, you know, because we started fighting in 2012, and now it's 2017. It's the same fight, but yet it's a different fight. But we're strong, and I'm confident that we'll get through it. But it's not anything that I would wish on another family.
No. And we will get justice for Maddie and all the other girls that have had their lives taken. We will get this vaccine taken off the market. If it kills us all, we are going to do this. We have to do it. And they're now trying to give it to babies. Can you imagine? So yeah, everybody here is unanimous in that this vaccine comes off the market. And as we say that, we get censored by Periscope. Okay, we're coming off social media, and we have more stories here. That's just interesting.
How'd you get censored?
Because we say silly things like we're going to take the HPV Gardasil off the market, and then it goes crackle, snap, pop, bang, down we go. All right, okay, we're coming off, guys. We will be back on with the next story, and everybody truly, truly loves you.
Thank you.
In June of 2000, behind closed doors at a secluded retreat in Georgia, top scientists, government officials, and pharmaceutical executives met in secret. Their mission? To discuss alarming new data. Data that showed a strong correlation between mercury in vaccines and neurodevelopmental disorders. Officially titled Scientific Review of Vaccine Safety Data Link, this would later be dubbed the Simpsonwood Meeting. We came back to the scene. All we could find was rubble where the retreat and conference center once stood. What happened in this place was never meant for public ears. What happened next would change history. But before we can understand Simpsonwood, we have to go back 25 years to the policies, the cover-ups, and the warning signs that set the stage.
Get a shot of protection, the swine flu shot.
It's in the best interest of all of our citizens.
Health director ordered a stop to all swine flu shots.
And to grasp its full consequences, we must examine what has happened in the 25 years since.
It used to be 1 in 10,000, and now it's 1 in more than 250.
It is a perfect exponential curve.
Parents making decisions about their children's health deserve to have the best information available to them. You have studied vaccinated versus unvaccinated.
We have not studied vaccinated versus unvaccinated.
We're not sure what causes autism, but we know that vaccines do not.
Vaccines do not cause autism.
Vaccines do not cause autism.
There is no correlation. The dramatic rise in autism diagnoses, 1 in 31 children, up from 1 in 54 children back in 2016.
Scientific progress on this has been slow because scientists are frankly scared to ask the question.
Genes don't cause epidemics. You need an environmental toxin.
One day everyone will know the truth about vaccines.
Uncover the truth about what happened at Simpsonwood and how corruption in the pharmaceutical industry, along with collusion at the highest levels of public health, paved the way for the explosion of chronic health issues in our children. This is a must-watch event.
Autism destroys families, but more importantly, it destroys our greatest resource, which are our children.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
pledged to find out what is driving the country's rise in autism.
Compiling medical records from a number of databases. He'll direct resources to study environmental factors, exposures, and external factors.
Scientific progress on this has been slow because scientists are frankly scared to ask the question.
Genes don't cause epidemics. You need an environmental toxin, and we're going to look at all the potential culprits.
With no a priori thumb on the scale, you can't look at that.
Yeah. I'm very grateful to the Secretary for finally saying from an important public platform that this is an epidemic and we need to find the causes and we need to stop it.
Other issues CHC has been pushing for years are finally gaining mainstream traction.
Today we're announcing we are removing industry members, pharma members from FDA advisory committees.
We're seeing reports that you're considering removing the COVID vaccine as a mandatory shot for children.
The recommendation for children was always dubious. The vaccine itself does have profound risk of myocarditis, pericarditis, even strokes.
Very, 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 very few people are still taking these things. In that sense, the mRNA vaccines for COVID in the marketplace are effectively dead.
We are working together to change the federal fluoride recommendations, and we're looking at the science now. There's a direct inverse correlation between fluoride exposure and lowered IQ in children.
Health officials announced plans to phase out 8 artificial dyes from our food supply.
The FDA is effectively removing all petroleum-based food dyes from the U.S. food supply.
We don't have a surveillance system that actually works, and that is a crime. And we will do that right away. And I understand the perverse incentives that need to be changed right away.
When there's a political will to answer a question like this, it will happen.
We're going to change things for real this time.